If you think you know what hell looks like, think again. Because what I am about to show you is a place where the world's most dangerous criminals are buried alive, where hope dies the moment the steel door slams shut, and where escape isn't just impossible, it's never even been attempted successfully. Before we dive into the darkness, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because this story will haunt you long after it ends. Drop a comment if you dare. Now, let's descend into the abyss. It was a frigid February morning in 1995 when the gates of ADX Florence first opened in the barren landscape of Fremont County, Colorado. The facility sat like a concrete tombstone against the Rocky Mountains, engineered with one singular purpose: to break the unbreakable. This wasn't just another maximum security prison. This was the end of the line. The last stop for men so violent, so cunning, so irredeemably dangerous that no other facility in America could contain them. Thomas Silverstein knew he was never leaving. They called him Terrible Tom, and for good reason. He had killed 3 men while incarcerated, including a prison guard named Merle Klutz, whom he stabbed 67 times. For that crime, Silverstein spent the last 36 years of his life in complete isolation. No human contact. No windows. No hope. When he died in 2019, he held the record for the longest time any prisoner had spent in solitary confinement in American history. ADX Florence had become his tomb long before his heart stopped beating. But Silverstein was just one ghost among many. Walk through the sterile corridors of ADX Florence, if you could, and you would pass cell after cell containing the architects of America's worst nightmares. Ramzi Youssef, the mastermind behind the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, who terrorized the nation for nearly 2 decades. Robert Hansen, the FBI agent who sold his country's secrets to Russia. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, who turned the Boston Marathon into a massacre. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the drug lord who had escaped from 2 Mexican prisons and vowed he would never be caged again. El Chapo learned quickly that ADX Florence was different. In Mexico, he had bribed guards, dug elaborate tunnels, vanished into laundry carts. But here, in the high desert of Colorado, there were no guards to bribe. The surveillance was total. The isolation was absolute. His cell measured 7 feet by 12 feet, a concrete box with a concrete bed, a concrete stool, and a stainless steel sink and toilet combination. The walls were thick enough to muffle any sound. The door was solid steel with a narrow slot for food trays. The single window, 4 inches wide, was positioned so he could see nothing but sky. No birds. No clouds. Just empty, mocking blue. 23 hours a day, every day, El Chapo sat in that box. 1 hour of recreation meant moving to another concrete box, slightly larger, with 20-foot walls and no roof. Alone. Always alone. No conversation. No contact. The psychological warfare was precise and relentless. Former warden Robert Hood, who spent 3 years at ADX Florence, later admitted the place haunted him. "It's far much worse than death," he said in an interview. "The inmates are very sick. They're dying." But the architects of ADX Florence would tell you this is exactly the point. The prison was designed by a team that included psychologists who understood that humans are social creatures, that we need interaction to maintain sanity. Remove that interaction completely, and the mind begins to cannibalize itself. Hallucinations, paranoia, catatonia, self-mutilation. The medical term is isolation syndrome, but the inmates have a simpler name for it: living death. In 2012, a lawsuit revealed the extent of the psychological devastation. Prisoners were smearing feces on their cell walls, swallowing razor blades, attempting to hang themselves with torn bedsheets. One inmate, Jack Powers, serving time for bank robbery, began eating his own flesh. Another, Harold Cunningham, gouged out both of his eyes. The lawsuit forced ADX Florence to create a mental health unit, but critics argue it changed nothing. The isolation continued, the breaking continued, and yet, despite the horror, despite the brutality, despite numerous legal challenges and human rights organizations calling it torture, ADX Florence has never had a successful escape. Not one, not even an attempt that came close. The security is layered like an onion, each layer more sophisticated than the last. Motion detectors, pressure pads, laser beams, 12-foot razor wire fences, gun towers staffed 24/7. Attack dogs trained to hunt, and those are just the outer defenses. Inside, the technology is even more advanced. Every door is controlled remotely. Guards never enter the cell blocks alone. Communications are monitored. Letters are photocopied. Inmates receive only the copies. Phone calls are rare and heavily surveilled. Visits are conducted through thick plexiglass. No physical contact ever. Even the recreation cages are designed so inmates cannot see each other, cannot communicate, cannot coordinate. Larry Hoover, the founder of the Gangster Disciples, one of Chicago's most powerful street gangs, thought he could still run his empire from inside ADX Florence. He was wrong. The Bureau of Prisons intercepted every message, decoded every attempt at hidden communication. Hoover's power evaporated in the sterile air of his concrete cell. The fortress had swallowed him whole. But in the summer of 2019, something unprecedented happened. A maintenance worker named Marcus Webb was conducting a routine inspection of the ventilation system in Range 13, the section housing some of the most dangerous inmates. As he removed a panel near cell 47, his flashlight caught something that made his blood turn cold. Scratched into the metal ductwork, barely visible, were words, "They don't watch everything." Webb reported it immediately. An investigation was launched. Cell 47 housed Dmitry Volkov, a Russian mob enforcer serving multiple life sentences for a series of brutal contract killings across 3 states. Volkov was known for his intelligence, his patience, and his chilling lack of emotion. When questioned about the message, he simply smiled. It was the first time any guard had seen him display any expression at all in the 4 years he had been there. The warden ordered a complete sweep of Volkov's cell. They found nothing. No contraband. No tools. No evidence of any escape attempt. The message in the duct was dismissed as psychological warfare, a desperate attempt to unsettle the staff. But 3 days later, during the morning count, the guards discovered something that sent shockwaves through the entire federal prison system. Cell 47 was empty. Dmitry Volkov was gone. The impossible had happened. For the first time in ADX Florence's 24-year history, a prisoner had vanished. Everything was exactly as it should be, except for one critical detail. Dmitry Volkov had disappeared from the most secure prison on Earth. Agent Chen stood in Elena Morozov's kitchen, staring at those 5 words written in a dead woman's handwriting. Except she wasn't dead. Not yet. The tea was still warm. The chair pushed back at an angle that suggested a hurried departure. No signs of struggle. No blood. No forced entry. Elena had walked out of this house willingly, and that changed everything. The tactical team spread through the property, searching for any trace of where they had gone. Dogs picked up a scent leading to the dirt road behind the farmhouse, then lost it where tire tracks showed a vehicle had been parked. Chen contacted Russian intelligence, reaching out to old FSB contacts who owed him favors. What came back was worse than he imagined. 3 weeks before Volkov's escape, Alina's son, the child she had been pregnant with when she testified, had been arrested in Moscow on drug charges. His name was Anton Morozov, and he had foolishly traveled to Russia searching for his roots, for the family his mother never talked about. The charges were fabricated. Everyone knew it. This was the mob's leverage, pressure applied through corrupt officials who were still on the payroll. Anton was being held in Butyrka prison, one of Moscow's oldest and most brutal facilities. The message to Alina was clear: come home, face what you did, or your son dies in a Russian cell. But Alina couldn't go to Russia. The moment she stepped off the plane, she would be dead. So she had called the only person who could help her, the only person with the skills and connections to extract Anton from an impossible situation. Her half-brother. The ghost. Dmitry Volkov. Chen finally understood. Volkov hadn't escaped ADX Florence for revenge or freedom. He had escaped for family. The most wanted man in America had broken out of the most secure prison on earth to save his nephew, a young man he had never met. It was insane. It was impossible. And it was exactly the kind of twisted loyalty that defined the Russian underworld. But there was a problem. Volkov needed money, resources, and connections to pull off an extraction from Moscow. And there was only one place he could get all three: the Russian mob's American operations, centered in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. That meant Volkov was heading east. Chen alerted every law enforcement agency between Kansas and New York. The net was tightening. 2 days later, a body was found in a warehouse in Cleveland. Viktor Kruglov, a mid-level Russian mob accountant, had been shot twice in the head, execution style. His safe had been emptied, nearly $400,000 in cash gone. Security footage showed two figures entering the warehouse at 3 a.m. One was clearly Volkov. The other, smaller, wore a hood that concealed her face. Chen pulled up the live feed. A Moscow news station was broadcasting breaking coverage from Butyrka prison. During the early morning hours, a coordinated attack had taken place. Explosives. Automatic weapons. Smoke grenades. A security team overwhelmed in minutes. And in the chaos, one prisoner had been extracted, Anton Morozov. The attackers had vanished before police could respond, disappearing into Moscow's sprawling underground tunnel system. But here was the detail that made Chen's hands go numb. The attack hadn't been carried out by Volkov.